That's what I've been doing in my entire life. Understand who am I talking to and finding the language that works with them. Now I think we all have to understand that the target audience is shifting, is changing, and we have to find new ways to communicate to people about Jewish issues, about identity, about causes, about values we believe in, and the problems that we have.
Welcome to Something in the Water. I'm Rachel, and this is my podcast about Budapest's Jewish community through interviews with the individuals who shape it. Thank you for being here. We are recording on April 22nd, 2026. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Barna Szász. Barna is an XR, extended reality creator and educator. He founded and lectures Stanford's first AR storytelling class. His documentary works have been acquired by The Guardian, PBS, staff picked at Vimeo, and viewed by more than 3 million people. Barna was also a video journalist and head of video at Hungary's largest online magazine, Index. And today, Barna's primary project is If These Streets Could Talk, a state-of-the-art augmented reality experience exploring Jewish history and Holocaust memory in Budapest's Jewish Quarter. Barna holds a master's in fine arts from Stanford, where he was a Fulbright scholar, and a BA from the University of Theater and Film Arts, Budapest. Hello, Barna.
Hi there. Excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. First, can you help us out with understanding what exactly it means to be a extended reality creator and what is augmented reality?
Yeah. So I always say that I'm originally a documentary filmmaker, something that people understand. I'm interested in stories in our society and learning more about our society and helping others learn about society and hopefully make the world a better place through sharing these stories. And around 10 years ago, I noticed that there was a very unique shift happening. New technologies started to emerge while we were still doing film. And very soon I discovered that we are currently in this super exciting phase in history where a new medium is being born. I don't think it's, too extreme to compare it to the birth of cinema. Birth of cinema, most people heard about the Lumiere brothers from France who started inventing the language of film and also the technology for film. And that was super exciting. They filmed a lot of things, including Budapest. They traveled all the way to Budapest at the end of the 19th century, so we have footage from that.
I need to see that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You can see the chain bridge, etc. And everyone back then was just experimenting with what this new technology, and it's a new medium. And so I started realizing we're in a similar era where a new medium is being born. This is virtual reality. Most people have heard about virtual reality and imagine this big clunky headset that is, taped to your face, and it's really uncomfortable, but it's kind of interesting. Some people got so excited about it, like Mark Zuckerberg, that he even changed his company's name into Meta, and then nothing happened. So a lot of people, I think, also assume that this is just a flop and there's nothing really happening, no change happening, and we'll keep watching films over the next decade. But I was a master's student at Stanford, and I was curious, I was skeptical of this new medium, and I did some research, and I basically read everything I could on this. I tried quote unquote watched all the like virtual reality documentaries, and I in like 2017 I got 100% sure that this is a very valid shift, that a new medium is being born, and I got really excited to not be the Lumiere brother, as of augmented reality, but definitely to contribute to this whole experimentation of this new medium. So it can be either this big headset, attached to your face, which I don't prefer. That's virtual reality, or augmented reality, which is so much more natural. You are just wearing glasses like reading glasses that you are used to, but those also have a built-in see-through display. So when you look at your environment, you can see extra added layers in your environment, or you can just look at it at the world through an iPad screen. And that's actually what we're doing in If the Streets Could Talk. We're giving you an iPad, which basically serves as a magic window to this other world that takes place on the streets of Budapest, at the streets of the Jewish quarter, Király Utca Street, Csányi Street, Dob Street. These are streets that everyone knows. This is the heart of Budapest, and we are giving you this magic window, and those streets are going to be transformed completely.
What's your priority right now with the project? Since you've been back?
So many things.
Okay.
But basically we finished these 3 prototypes. We user tested them. We are analyzing all the feedback, which is really important, from stakeholders, from museum professionals to education professionals, all of those. And at the same time, we are doing a lot of historical research for the If the Streets Could Talk 2027, which is going to be the public-facing major, flagship project that we've been working forward for many years now. And so we are in script writing and early script writing phase. A lot of historical research, and you cannot read enough about history and read enough of those, testimonies, interviews. It's also really hard to explore pre-Holocaust life, because a lot of people did interviews about Holocaust times, and we're still learning a lot about that. But how was the thriving Jewish quarter before the Holocaust at the turn of the century? These are exciting and challenging at the same time to find out.
How did you decide which particular stories to tell using AR, starting with the prototypes and then moving towards the public-facing that's going to come soon?
It's not easy to decide, because there's so many stories to tell, and already we see so many aspects that should be their own experience, their own film, etc. But something that was driving me is the story of my family history. So my grandma and other parts of the family survived in the ghetto, and my grandma never told about anything about this. I asked, we had a very personal, direct, good relationship. I could talk with her about anything, but not about issues related to the Holocaust or general about our Jewish heritage. And after she passed away, we found one of the protection papers that she had. And so it was, a Wallenberg, a Righteous Among the Nation person. And that is very touching to me, just as a concept that there were people who were not Jewish, but who felt responsible for, giving a helping hand to people in this other group. It's not their own group. They are not doing this work for, themselves or their identity groups. They reach across these imagined, subsections of society, and they offer a helping hand, and many times they risk a lot of things. Many times they risk their lives, and that was very touching to me. And I thought we should definitely represent these people and the choices they make, or how an everyday person can basically decide to help or not. That's a very interesting dilemma. So that was definitely one personal inspiration. But also, very soon we started working together with this ethical researcher and expert, Dr. Victoria Richardson-Walden from the University of Sussex, Landecker Digital Memory Lab. She's basically the #1 expert on digital Holocaust memory, and she's like a very crucial collaborator on this project. And through a lot of conversations with her about how Holocaust representation has been, has had some challenges and problems before. Like, for example, I think for you who now tried it, you will understand this. In most movies, in those very successful ones, you see that the Holocaust happened and it was awful, but it happened somewhere far away in death camps. The people who talk there, they talk many times in German. So it was committed by Germans. And that's a very convenient view, especially for Hungarians. We haven't really faced our past and our role in the Holocaust. And so that was very important for us to also, first of all, show a story in the heart of Budapest. So Holocaust, yes, happened far away, but it also happened in the middle of our cities in broad daylight. And it was committed by fellow Hungarians who speak Hungarian. This is very important for us to represent. Another prototype is about the bystander syndrome, and we tried to create a story where you are offered to intervene, but you're kind of like you're too busy with something else, with a mundane task, going to this bakery and getting a really good, what is it called in English? Kind of like a Christmas cookie, and buy it for your family because Christmas is coming and you're very busy with that. And I can relate to that. We are all always so busy with whatever the daily routines we have, and it's really hard to get our heads out of the water and actually realize that even today there are people who we could actively help. So I think there's a lot of universal truths in the stories of the Holocaust too. So this was the third story.
How do you hope people to be changed by their experience with If These Streets Can Talk? And also, how do you hope that the space around them will change with this project?
As I mentioned, I was a skeptic of what augmented reality is capable of, because, and I think this will resonate with most of the listeners, when we see new technology and we go to a museum and there's something with new technology, or there's an app you can download in a national park so that your kids will participate in going to a national park and going to nature because there's an app. It feels like a weird use of new technology. I definitely don't want to use apps to engage with nature. In a museum,
it's a bit contradictory.
Yeah, in a museum, many times they give you something that looks very engaging and shiny and interactive, but it's only interesting for 5 minutes, and people actually don't really get a lot out of it. And I think that's the core experience of people with these new technologies, that they are exciting at first, they are shiny at first, but they are not particularly meaningful. And we are challenging this. I was at Stanford as a grad student, and I was just exploring these new technologies, and I saw an experiment that completely changed my thinking. All right, very simple, very simple. Imagine an empty room, completely empty room, with 2 empty chairs. You go into that room, you put on augmented reality headsets, and suddenly, on one of those chairs, there's a virtual human sitting, and that virtual human starts talking to you, interacting with you. And then we say, all right, Rachel, that was the experiment. Here's a paper survey. Please sit down and fill it out. And when we do this, I can tell that 100% you will sit in the other chair, even though both chairs are physically empty, right? This is already mind-blowing.
That this experience in AR can really impact you.
Yeah, so AR changes how we behave in the physical space, right? And there's a version B of this experiment where, same thing, empty room, 2 empty chairs. Rachel goes in, puts on augmented reality glasses, sees this virtual human being. There's some kind of interaction. But then we take off the AR glasses of you, so you don't see anything anymore. And then we say, okay, experiment is over. Here's a paper survey. Please sit down and fill it out. And still, 72% of the participants sit in the other chair. Even though both chairs are physically empty, now virtually empty too, because the AR is over. So what we witness there is that augmented reality, even though it feels lightweight, it actually changes our perception of the physical space around us. It changes our mental image of physical spaces. It changes our behavior. It changes our feelings, emotions, etc. And that I found extremely powerful and extremely inspiring. And when I came back to Budapest, I was walking in my home neighborhood, which is the former Jewish quarter. I noticed this void of the historical layers. I knew that a lot of important events have unfolded here during the ghetto years, during the Yellow Star houses years. These are, kind of same year, 1944, but also before the thriving Jewish quarter. And no one, I realized how this was not memorialized. There was an absence of any kind of visibility of this. Today, this is a party district full of bars and restaurants. And it just kind of screamed for an augmented reality intervention. And that's how I started engaging with this. And to your question, I really hope that after you go through this experience, you will not be able to unsee those events that happened there. You won't be able to just think of those streets without these historical layers. I'm hoping that it will change our behavior in the streets to be a little bit more mindful of what has happened there. I hope that it will change the long-term urbanistic planning for the neighborhood, because all those people in charge will go through this experience, and suddenly their understanding of what Belső Erzsébet város, Inner Elizabeth Town, the former Jewish quarter, will be augmented with the stories that we basically recreate from the past, and I think that will be a powerful change.
I was lucky to experience a prototype of the project not that long ago and walk through the Jewish quarter with the iPad, seeing these additional layers.
Which one did you
try? I was a non-Jewish man who was saving people, yeah.
Okay.
And pretty much I had a huge smile on my face until I didn't. Like hearing your voice and feeling like I was so immersed was like, yeah, I had a huge smile on
You had to read subtitles.
Yes.
So for you, it's more mediated, but you could still enjoy it or have a worthwhile experience. Enjoyment is a too simple word for what it is.
No, I mean, that's why, like, in the beginning when I was smiling so big, just because I've never felt this before, I was also kind of like, is it okay that I'm smiling if it's a sad story? And then I guess when you see the, like, dramatic things, you change your look. I guess Holocaust so far, like, you maintain a healthy distance. Even if it happened to your family, like something that's so tragic, it's easier to kind of see that it happened far away, very separate from you. And this experience, like from the minute that I heard your voice, it's clear that it's personal. I was stopped by an arrow cross and had to put up my hand into the camera to show my ID before I could continue.
Your fake arrow cross ID.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And, okay, this was uncomfortable, yes, and probably the most striking moment of the whole thing, that all of a sudden I played a role in this story. Like, I haven't seen that before in Holocaust education. So I guess 2 questions. One is making us actors in the stories, like what sort of thinking went into that decision, and also this project being a way to carry forward Holocaust memory when we're running out of survivors as an educational method. Let's start with the actors.
So, you're right at the most important, I think, question and conflict of this entire project. As a documentary filmmaker, I really went into interrogating what this new medium is. And very soon, I saw that all those virtual reality and augmented reality documentary experiences where you were not an active character, when you didn't have an active role, like in a film, right? In a film, you're just watching it from the outside like a fly on a wall. And that perfectly works for film. But what I saw is that it was really not working for this interactive media. Even if it was something as important as the Holocaust, it was just not engaging and not working. And that's a terrible failure when you want to, bring the stories of the Holocaust to future generations. So we moved away, and we have to move away from storytelling to story living. And that was my key artistic approach. And when I first approached some of the Jewish organizations that I thought would be natural partners for the project, they got really concerned because there's the guidelines of IRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, for education. And it has a couple of it doesn't say anything about interactive media, but it has a couple of sentences saying that you should avoid role play, you should avoid simulation. And so, people treat that as a Bible or Torah for, Holocaust memory. So they really treat it as the ultimate guiding rule. And so they told me that If the Streets Could Talk has an interesting concept, but unfortunately they cannot collaborate with me because we are going against those guidelines. And I experienced many doors shut into my face, and I almost gave up. But I really thought that we should embrace story living. You have to have an active role in the story, otherwise it will not be engaging. And that's when, last minute, when I almost gave up, I met this fantastic researcher, Dr. Victoria Richardson-Walden, and she said that finally someone is trying to do this right. And she encouraged me. And then basically together we were able to convince the Claims Conference to be one of the main funders and one of the most important funders for this project. And so I really respect them because this is, kind of like a pioneering initiative. We are trying to right or create a new methodology for Holocaust memory, and they were brave enough to jump on board. And JDC was also supportive. So we started after a while finding these organizations that supported us, and all the feedback, yours, I think, right now, and all the very detailed user testing we did confirms that this was the right path. And this is also to your question. These experiences are not public facing yet, partly for technical reasons, but also because we always thought that there are ethical risks with how you make traumatic stories immersive, where you have to go through these stories as if they were happening to you. And then it's not responsible to bring this immediately to the wide audiences. We should do these first internal testing rounds, which is a safe way of testing. And based on what we learn, based on what we see that was too much, too immersive, too triggering, we can fine-tune it and then bring something to the public that we can, 100% stand behind and we think is powerful, but also ethical. These are really important.
I saw on your website you explain that AR can be both a threat and opportunity. So when you're talking about AR, not just for storytelling, but story living, I guess this is something that you are thinking a lot about. Can you say more about the threats and the opportunities?
Oh, so many things. I think this medium is extremely powerful. As we already talked about, it can change how we understand the world around us. It can change how we navigate the world around us. Something that is not even a future, dystopia, but also already happening. A lot of companies are misusing it. So, for example, Pokemon Go is very popular. It's, tens of millions of people have actively played it. It, for example, it brings teenagers, it puts these poke gyms close to or next to Starbuckses so that our kids just happen to show up at Starbucks, for example. It's very unethical. This is not disclosed, but this is what they are doing. And this is just something from 2016, right? And the future uses of augmented reality, I think in the future, everyone will wear reading glasses like augmented reality glasses. So we're going to see a lot of virtual layers, and who owns those layers, who dictates those layers, and by that defines our understanding of the world, those companies or governments will have a lot of influence on our lives. And I think it's very important that they let academics and artists have a voice in this, because those are the people who don't have business interest and can interrogate this with a more ethical lens.
Have you gone through any AR experiences before that have changed the way you behave? Like If These Streets Could Talk, or are we really in early stages?
What
else is out there?
There was at Stanford, one of the first AR experiences I saw was about this nationally famous sexual assault case of Chanel Miller Brock Turner. And it was the experience was set up right at that site where this act happened. And it was really incredibly moving and shaking. And, I just have a very different relationship and kind of visceral understanding of that story, as opposed to, I've seen so many coverage on news and media and read articles, but this was something more visceral. And every time I go near that place, my brain just knows that, yes, that's what happened. My feelings change. But also, let me give you an example that everyone knows. Okay. Augmented reality is not new. Augmented reality is cave paintings 40,000 years ago. And augmented reality is also the shoes on the Danube bank, in my understanding, that's also augmenting our environment, adding a new layer of meaning to that Danube bank part. And when you walk there, suddenly it changes your emotions, it changes how you behave, it changes how you feel, it changes our understanding of what that, part of the riverbank means. And so I hope everyone can relate to that particular example because everyone has tried it. And in my mind, digital AR is the same. It's just we're just using a newer technology.
Do you have hopes for how, if these streets can talk, impacts Jewish users versus non-Jewish users differently?
So I guess it's a fine balance because there's valid concern that for people of Jewish heritage in Europe, everyone has stories with the Holocaust in their family and trauma. So we have to be, therefore, extremely cautious about, how we're basically representing these traumatic events. And we are. That's why these prototyping and research phases. For the non-Jewish audience, my background, or I was always interested in how to get to the widest audience possible. And that's what I did at Index with like more marginal topics, but how to discuss it in a language that everyone understands. So my dream is that this is going to be such a unique experience of the city of Budapest that everyone, non-Jewish people, even kind of like semi-anti-Semitic people will be interested in trying out because it's so unique, it's so meaningful, such a meaningful way to engage with the history of your city. And so we can bring in a lot of people who would normally not engage with Holocaust memory and give them a meaningful experience. And I think there's a lot of potential in that because those people will not watch those movies we watch. They will not read those books we read. This is Holocaust Remembrance Day last week, and reading the comments under some of the articles in Hungarian media was very sad. So I hope we can change minds or at least augment people's understanding.
Yeah. How aware is the average Hungarian of Jewish heritage in Budapest? Do you think not so much?
How aware?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think they are. I mean, this is so unique to Hungary. If you talk to any other country in the region, you hear how many months or sometimes even an entire year of Holocaust education students receive in high school. In Hungary, that's 45 minutes in total, or maybe another additional visit to a museum or visit from an organization like Haver, like an educational organization, which are great, but we are definitely unaware of most things. It's definitely a taboo in a lot of the families. So I went to an extremely good high school. I come from a family with Jewish heritage, and so based on how little I knew before I really started exploring all these history sources, I would say that the average Hungarian knows even less, and that's very, very little.
How has the role of heritage changed in your Jewish identity since starting this project?
The role of heritage?
Like the importance of heritage to your Jewishness.
Yeah, I feel passionate about, I guess, like the more I understand how influential Jews have been in Hungarian history, I'm still looking for the right like terms or words, but I feel like Jews in Hungary are potentially the most successful immigration history in the history of Hungary, except that it isn't, because it ended in a terrible, devastating failure and loss. But up until that point, how much influence it had on the country, on the culture, is very unique if you compare it to other European countries. Hungarian Jews were very integral part of Hungarian society. They were in many other countries like Poland. If you looked at a census, you would see, this city is 70% Polish and 30% Jewish or something like that. In Hungary, it was, I'm simplifying it, but it was like 100% Hungarian. And within those, there's 70% Christian Hungarian and 30% Jewish. So Jews in Hungary were very much Hungarian. They spoke and acted like the majority Hungarian society, who were also a complex tapestry of immigrants. Anyway, so I'm passionate about this, and the more I learn about how influential and how unique the Hungarian Jewish history is, I guess the more it shapes my Jewish identity as well.
What has your interaction been like with the organized Hungarian Jewish community so far since you started this project?
Yeah. With the formal federation, actually, we couldn't really establish like a very close relationship. And there are a couple of institutions where we couldn't do that, even though we approached them. But we were able to establish a lot of very rich and very helpful connections with other organizations, like JDC, like the Golem Jewish Theater, like our host institution, the Csányi 5 Jewish History Collection, like the Holocaust Museum in Budapest. They have been really supportive. The World Jewish Congress have been incredibly supportive. So it's actually very meaningful to form these collaborations. With Haver, we're hoping to create like a whole educational path or track for it. So I definitely learned a lot from them, and hopefully, and they all provided us feedback. So we're just hoping to learn a lot from all these people who have been in this space for a much longer time than I have, and build that into the public-facing version. Cool. Yeah.
Do you imagine this technology being used in other cities for other stories in the future? And how are you leading the charge with that?
Yeah. There are definitely a couple of people around the world who are trying to do similar things. And I learn a lot from them, and we're in touch. There's going to be a book on these site-specific augmented reality experiences on the world, and the author is coming to Budapest in June and is going to include If the Shits Could Talk in that, which is crazy to me because the other creators who are included are some of like the most esteemed artists who have many times exhibited at the Venice Biennale and all in those big institutions, and we haven't done any of those. So I think this will influence. Our hope is that this will influence a lot, and we are active in that actually, and that is, I think, why the Claims Conference is excited about this. That this is not only about one single, very powerful experience in Budapest, but this is a methodology that we will offer for free. This is a nonprofit initiative. So we are collecting all the wisdom, everything we learned. We're writing this hopefully good guidebook, and providing it for free, open access to anyone to use and replicate it somewhere else. We are definitely focusing on Jewish heritage because that is what this is, specialized in.
Mm-hmm.
And we are actually just this fall, we're starting this workshop series where we're going to invite other organizations from all around Europe. So we already start disseminating the knowledge. But to your point, there's a lot of other histories and heritage professionals who could learn a lot from what we do here and learn from the mistakes that we do, but also learn from some of the successes.
How has your process and production of If These Streets Can Talk been informed by the documentarian in you and the journalist in you?
It's an ongoing back and forth between my scriptwriter and I. He's Daniel Daoud. He's a super talented scriptwriter, but he comes from fiction film, and he's extremely good at learning what this new medium is and this new language. But he definitely has had some fiction writing instincts, which is very natural. And I'm always the documentarian in the room. And so basically we only work based on real documented, historical events and sources. And that is the main distinction between many of the movies we've seen, because we're trying to create something that is not kind of inspired by a true story or based on a true story, but we want to be able to basically create a whole room in a museum after you went through the experience and present all the historical material that we worked with. And so you could just find basically the historical evidence for everything that you witnessed. There might be, it's more complex than that because sometimes we have the main hero that you embodied, and maybe they were not saving those particular two people, that day, but we got that from another story and we put it together. But all the puzzle pieces are based on real events and documents. And finally, I think what's important to me from my documentary background is that we have to be very transparent with the process itself. So if we have something that maybe is a character that is put together from two actual lived historical characters, we have to state that at the end. This is how we worked. If we are transparent about the process, I think there's room for this kind of creativity, but we have to be very detailed and transparent about how we work.
I was really impressed at the end of the prototype when I was looking around at an AR room in a museum, I guess, at pictures of the Jewish Quarter, which were exactly what I just walked through, and seen the street signs and seen the yellow star houses.
Yeah.
The pictures looked exactly like what I saw through my iPad screen.
Because so we created this kind of virtual exhibition of showing the original materials, and that was only a fraction of the original materials that we worked from. But I'm glad that it resonated with you. It is powerful, right? Because the whole thing is so new, and of course people have this natural assumption to maybe think that, maybe not everything was true here, or maybe this is some part of it is just kind of creativity, creative writing. And then bam, we put this in your face, showing all the original documents. Actually, we're going to, for example, photos, and you're like, oh my God, that is that place and that signage from that corner that I went through. And this is exactly how the ghetto wall looked like, etc. That's another. So there's no photo of the Budapest ghetto wall. And that's a good example of what we did. We had to do a lot of research. We talked to multiple survivors who were kids back then, but
Describing
still remembered.
what it looked like.
Yeah, and then, but it's funny because you talk to a survivor who was 6 years old or 7, so they describe it as like, oh, it was like 10 meters tall, and it wasn't really, but they were very short.
So there's no pictures?
No picture of the Budapest ghetto wall.
How
there
is
are
that?
there
How
are
can that be?
misinterpreted pictures that we found. Our team found out that was actually not from Budapest, but from the countryside. How can that be? I don't know. Maybe because it was only 6 weeks in Budapest, so maybe, but I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. But we also found one of our historians who is doing research, the order receipts. Like there's, someone had to build the ghetto wall. So there are these original documents where they detail what materials, how it is constructed. So based on these multiple resources, we were able to construct it to the best version based on our understanding.
And seeing the wall also like on the street that I walk all the time, and now thinking, okay, every time I'm there for the rest of my life, am I going to be thinking of those Arrow Cross soldiers and the wall there? That will change the way that I see my city.
Yeah. Based on the feedback we got, these were very long interviews with each individual who tested it. Mm. People have a much better spatial understanding of the ghetto. Many interviewees we had are saying that before they experienced If the Streets Could Talk, the ghetto was a very blurry, vague concept in their head. Like, it was somewhere here, but what does it mean, And now it's a very clear and spatial understanding. And, oh, yeah, when I walk in Chinese Street or Kisdiófa, that's exactly, I remember because that's where I had to walk through, or that's where I had to save someone. And so it's a very powerful and effective way for memory and for representing these things.
Yeah. It's special to me to spend time in a city with rich Jewish heritage, a city where the Holocaust happened. I do feel like I noticed the stumbling stones, which are gold stones in the ground that say the family's name that lived in that building when they were taken, where they were killed.
A form of augmented reality.
I guess a form of augmented reality. And I also, I appreciate these things, or I notice these things because of my Jewishness and my educational background. I like the day-to-day reminders of what happened here that sometimes makes me sad that my peers don't see the city in the same way. And reading a textbook isn't so exciting, but being part of a brand new technological experience, even if that's the hook for people to learn about this history, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we really see this as just something that is super interesting to a wider than average audience. Yeah. And we hope that this only is the start of a conversation. So, and this is not only our hope, this is actual documented phenomenon from other projects around the world. This will bring in a lot of people to those museums, for example, that they would normally not walk into because why? Or read a book on it that they would normally not read. So this really just opens a door. It's a gateway drug to something more deeper understanding and learning. So we want to do longitudinal studies on how powerful we can, make this effect. Hopefully we will have data on this too.
Yeah, the AR lets you come face to face with these stories that people might not have heard about before or have just thought about in the distance. And that's really powerful to come face to face like that. In some digging that I did, I came across one production of yours that you did well at Index that's interesting to me, that's also about coming face to face with stories and people that you might not have heard before.
Yeah.
Anti-refugee hate commentators meet actual refugees.
Okay.
It's helpful to understand your thinking before this project. Can you tell me about what it took to make this project happen, why it's important to you, what impact came from it?
Yeah, I was a little bit worried that you were gonna ask me about this other video where I came face to face with neo-Nazis who beat me up while at Index. That was definitely defining experience for me. But
They beat you up because you were a journalist or a Jew?
because I was working for Index, which they associated with Jews, and yeah,
Wow. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
it is crazy. And it is, I think, when I share this in the US or many times, it was very hard for people to understand like where Hungary stood, like how just the general anti-Semitism was in Hungary growing up here. But and I don't look Jewish, so this is really just about
Whatever that means,
Oh yeah,
Barna. Okay.
yeah, I know. But I mean, like, I could have been, more visibly exhibiting.
Mediterranean.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so it's just, it was definitely an era where this was not, I think, that surprising in retrospect. And I have to say that since then, it's gone better.
When did this happen?
2013. Yeah. But but let's talk about the other video. So yeah, that was basically, there are parallels, right? There was a big wave of refugees coming to Europe because they were fleeing from war, and our government ran this super anti-refugee, anti-immigrant propaganda, and which affected people's thinking a lot. And I just saw, I was working for Index, and I saw all these comments that were extremely violently anti-immigrant and anti-refugee. And I kind of like, I'm naive in a way that I think people are not bad actors by nature, and they are always capable of a better nature. So I was like, I don't think any of these commenters know what they're talking about, and I don't think they have ever met a refugee. So I reached out to some of these most extreme commenters who sometimes I felt scared of when
this happened
I
after you had this,
when I met them.
the incident.
Yeah.
But wow. Okay, so you're brave.
Yeah, or you're trying to regain your braveness, and I reached out to a lot of them. A fraction of them replied and was collaborative. I reached out to them and I asked them, would they be open to meet actual refugees and talk with them in front of our cameras. And so some volunteered, and we went to the Keleti railway station, which was the main hub back then for these people who were really just fleeing for a better life. And they were face to face with those people who they talked about in a terrible, dehumanizing way. And you could see, I think, the shift on all of their faces. They started with those, kind of like propagandistic understanding of who these people are, and all of those were, I think, breaking apart by the end of the video. Not 100%, right? But it started. And so that ended up being, I think, definitely like one of my, most viewed videos. It was very popular, but also it just created a shift in the conversation and brought in more complexity in people's understanding of these people who they really had no understanding of. So I felt there are some ethics in like who am I to even ask some of these refugees to participate in something like this. So there are, I think, ethical questions from a documentary perspective, which are important to discuss, but I still feel good about making this video. And I'm grateful for all the people who participated.
All that you're doing and that you've done to bring people face to face with stories or other, like people from other backgrounds that they might not understand, make assumptions about. Whether you think of yourself as a leader or in the community or not, how are you thinking about the example that you and your work and your thinking is setting for the community here?
In the Hungarian Jewish community, I still feel, I guess it's a process. I just want to be a useful and helpful person. I have immense respect to all these organizations who have been doing what they are doing for much longer than I do. So I am definitely not a leader, or I don't feel like it. But hopefully, I'm just hoping that we are showing another way that is worthwhile. Like, it's so fantastic, for example, to collaborate with the Golem Jewish Theater. And so they contribute a lot to this project. And I'm hoping that I'm bringing, their art to newer audiences, to wider audiences. Maybe there's going to be newer collaborations that come out of this. Definitely, I don't feel like a leader, but if after a while and after we bring this to the audience, they will think that I added something positive to the Hungarian Jewish community and to the majority society's understanding of Hungarian Jews, then I will be just very honored and happy and satisfied.
Amazing. Did you tell any specifically or Jewish connected stories while at Index?
Oh, yeah. Many times I went to the March of the Living, and I created basically just there too. My approach was, how do we make a video which talks to the wider and non-Jewish audience? And there were fantastic non-Jewish participants of the March of the Living that still to this day is very, moving to me. Like, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't feel like it, but I still feel always a little bit moved when someone who is not Jewish feels that this is important to, represent these stories or just empathize or stand up. I don't know. It's just, I always feel grateful, and I was able to find a lot of people there and give voice to them.
Can you actually, I think it might be interesting for people, and it was quite famous, what happened at Index?
Oh, yeah. So Index was basically the New York Times equivalent of Hungary. A fantastic news and magazine organization, online only, and it was definitely the starting page of most Hungarians. They just wake up and the first thing they look at is Index. So whatever we published there really influenced the Hungarian civil discourse, public discourse. And then because of this, the Hungarian government that didn't like free media, they gradually, over years and years of all kinds of manipulation, first they were just able to pressure the leadership to resign, leadership after leadership, and then applying more and more political pressure. And in the end, they basically openly acquired the entire organization to turn it into a government-controlled media, which is the opposite of free press. It's the opposite of what a healthy democracy needs. And so then all of my colleagues just handed in their resignation. I was in the US already on a long-term leave, so I posted my resignation from the Stanford post office, and we all left. And fortunately, it came with a lot of sacrifice. A lot of people, a lot of very talented journalists have left journalism since then, but some of them, fortunately, were able to found a new outlet, which is called Telex, and it's great and it's growing. So free society, free press has been very important in Hungary, I think, to shift Hungary back to a more democratic way of existing, and all of these outlets, I think, are trying to do something similar that we try to do here, is to like help people better understand history, understand society, and through that make this world a little bit more empathetic and hopefully better place. It's not easy. There's a lot of work to do.
Can you tell us how the Orbán government affected your life over time?
Oh my God. There are many ways, and it's kind of, for an American audience, I constantly have I'm hitting walls in explaining it. It's not easy. It's a very sinister way of oppressing people. But basically, they went for all the institutions gradually. So media, higher education, not just higher education, education in general, and if they take away these institutions. So one very particular example, I applied for a Fulbright so that I go to the US, learn a lot of new things there, for example, augmented reality, and I take all that knowledge back to Hungary. And in my application, I detailed it. I'm going to go back to my alma mater, the University of Film and Drama, and start a new course. I'm going to go back to Index and start introducing some of these new mediums. And then I'm graduating from Stanford. I'm, ready to take this knowledge back. And the Hungarian government is shutting down Index the way it used to be, and shutting down the University of Film and Drama. They'll still function, but they were filled up with all these propaganda people, machinery people, and people who are definitely loyal to the government. That's the selection, main selection rule. And so that's some of it. Also, when now we are working on the project, Hungary is very behind on many things because they really oppressed higher education. They really oppressed cultural financing. There were separate organizations for like heritage, but they demolished them. They don't care about that because they wanted to just buy up old castles from stolen taxpayer money and get rich by that. So all these heritage organizations were in the way. And so what is a big struggle for us is to even assemble a team in Hungary for such an innovative project that is capable of doing something like this. Because we are a little bit in a time travel experience already. Hungary is behind some of our neighboring countries too, because the government kept Hungary in the past. That's one of the many things. But there are countless ways, and for every person. And it's just a lack of opportunities. People are trying to do their best, and always they faced this situation where even though they tried to do their best, they were skilled at something that didn't matter. It's loyalty to the government that mattered. And that is really detrimental to the entire culture. And people are just less happy in Hungary because of financial struggles, because of how the public healthcare is and how many people they've lost in their family. Because of where our public healthcare is, because of the public healthcare workers, how depressed they are, because of the really inhumane conditions they have to work at. So it's unfortunately it's all levels of society, and I'm super privileged to most, compared to most Hungarians, and even I feel it. But it's terrible, terrible, terrible as you go lower or go to other sections of society.
Now that the Orbán government is out, what are you hoping is possible for your world here? The Hungarian Jewish community, Hungary as a whole?
Yeah, good question.
Where's your head at?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but we definitely are hopeful. And I don't know how long it takes to rebuild 16 years of demolition. It usually takes more than 16 years. It's so much faster to shut down the best university in Hungary, Central European University, because it was founded by this Jewish boogeyman, George Soros, or Soros, as you say it in Hungarian. So, that university will never be reestablished in Hungary, and we're gonna be very isolated from the international scientific discourse for decades. I think that's my fear. I think it's going to take a lot more time, but I think everyone is very hopeful, at least for now. This is a new situation, that at least now we're not going backwards in time, but we finally are starting to move forward and towards the future, and that's already very good news for Hungarians. And that's why in a historic high, they turned out and voted for a change.
It's admirable that you had this plan to go to school in the States and then bring the knowledge back here with you. And I guess you things changed because you weren't able to come back here and have the freedom to do what you imagined.
Yes and no. So definitely not the way I imagined, but then eventually, I guess I found a way, which is this project.
Yeah.
And I still spend 3 months a year in California teaching this class at Stanford, which is basically a sandbox. Together with students, we are experimenting with the newest kind of ideas on how to use augmented reality in a meaningful way.
So fun.
And all that knowledge and all the technological stakeholders I'm meeting there, everything we do in this project basically comes from the US, or my still working presence in the US, and we're taking that back to Budapest and to Hungary, and it also, the passion for it comes from my Hungarian Jewish heritage, and that I really want to tell the story.
So I want to ask you if any key differences have jumped out to you between Jewish community life in Hungary versus what you've seen in the U.S.
It's interesting. I remember when I arrived in the U.S., it was a big surprise for me that there it wasn't shameful to be Jewish. In Hungary, it was definitely, I think that's what I grew up with. It was something we always talked about with those friends who we trusted, but we kind of wanted to keep it under the radar with others. And that was very freeing. I was so surprised that it's actually pretty cool to be Jewish in the U.S. I think that has been changing since a lot of things have unfolded. Since October 7th and since the reaction to that has been unfolding and is led by Netanyahu. And so now I think, again, it's a hard time to be Jewish, even in the U.S. But it was still very meaningful to experience a period when this was actually very, not just okay, but people were interested in what it meant and what it meant to be a Jew from Eastern Europe.
You felt that?
Yeah.
People met you with curiosity?
Yeah, and also just to explain the differences, because it's very different, I think, to many families I met who were Jewish in the U.S. They moved to the U.S. before the Holocaust, so they actually never went through these events. So definitely their heritage is very different. So their identities are different. But there was a lot of anti-Semitism in the U.S. before too. So I'm not trying to say that it was roses and unicorns at all, but it's definitely different. And to have more understanding about that was interesting.
Cool. What has been hard for you about being a Jew in the U.S. since October 7th?
I think Netanyahu seems to be successful in claiming that criticizing Israel's current government is anti-Semitism. And people seem to, the ones who don't like Netanyahu or criticize him, seem to somehow fall into this trap of equating Jewishness or Jewish identity with the politics of just, one current party. And which is anti-Semitic. And that's very unfortunate. And I'm definitely not the person who is most affected by this. And there are terrible victims of this. But even just talking about this project on international forums is very different than talking about it pre-October 7th. I also think about it as a storyteller. Like, as a storyteller, you always have to understand your target audience, right? And that's what I've been doing in my entire life. Understand who am I talking to and finding the language that works with them. Now I think we all have to understand that the target audience is shifting, is changing, and we have to find new ways to communicate to people about Jewish issues, about identity, about causes, about values we believe in, and the problems that we have.
The people that have made it hard have been from within the Jewish community for not seeing that as a Jew you're able to make these criticisms. Not only, no, from the majority society and from within the Jewish community as well. I'm a little bit, I don't know, I have criticized some organizations within the Jewish community before. Yeah, but the majority society too, and that's disheartening to see. It's the same people who have not been anti-Semitic before in the U.S. they don't think, I think, that they are anti-Semitic, but they are when they treat Jewish people differently because of what Netanyahu is doing. That's wrong. How connected do you feel to Budapest's Jewish community today with where you're at with the project?
Yeah, a lot more than before, which is amazing. It's very meaningful to me. Still not enough. So It's still a journey for me, and I think it's a process. I grew up in a non-practicing, half Christian, half atheist Jewish family. So, I didn't go to. So some parts of my family are doing Seder celebration. So I have more practicing parts of the family. At Christmas, we sing Hanukkah songs and Christian Christmas songs kind of interchangeably. And I think that's beautiful, but I've never really been part of the more religious community in Budapest, Jewish community in Budapest. So that's a process, and I think I will be more and more gradually connected.
Question, which I've been asking everyone, is about what is in the water in this community that listeners can learn from. What do you have to say to listeners who might be struggling with their Jewish identity, how they can feel more secure or understand complexities of one's identity?
Yeah, I think back to the entire point of this project, I think family history is something that is very personal to everyone. So, and it's infinite. You can just do more and more research, even if you don't have any, any family member who wrote down anything. You still have your name. You can still look into documents. You still know, hopefully, which country they came from. So you start researching the Jewish history of that country and just learn more in general about that. And I think understanding who you are through what your family has gone through, lived through, that's I think a very meaningful way of connecting to it.
Thanks. So if listeners make their way to Budapest, they should hopefully at that point use If These Streets Could Talk.
Yeah.
You have a restaurant recommendation.
Many. But Ghetto Goulash, for sure. It's run by this, I think, secular Jewish guy, and they have a good mix. Kőleves nearby, just one street away. It's used to be this kosher meat factory kind of. I learned it through this project, right?
Awesome.
And now it's a restaurant having partly, Middle Eastern Jewish, but also partly Hungarian food. These are just very casual restaurants, not at all fancy, but good ones.
Barna, thank you.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here and talk with you.